sign of faith. If you woke up this morning and that's a victory, being of this world ain't did shit for me. Cause that's his story, not my history. Seeking the Father to get a sense of me. Got my mind on the kingdom, I see it vividly. Better guard your mind, protect your energy. Gotta cleave to your word, that's my remedy. Gotta cleave to your word, that's my remedy. Spirit of life got us stood on our feet. Don't be deceived, they got a heart full of deceit. We daily oppressed, so we mourn and we weep. Just a messenger, Yahweh is God in my speech. We thankful just to make it through the weekend. An honorable man, it's not in season. Demands of the world got us drowning in the deep end. Hear the good news, salvation close. No time to boast, gotta be humble and hope. Even the devil shake and tremble, knowing this time is short. Make sure that my election is sure, and every nation go bow with their heads to the floor. Ain't no time for setbacks, stay covered in these laws. If you woke up this morning and that's a victory, being of this world ain't did shit for me. Cause that's his story, not my history. Seeking the Father to get a sense of me. Got my mind on the kingdom, I see it vividly. Better guard your mind, protect your energy. Gotta cleave to your word, that's my remedy. Gotta cleave to your word, that's my remedy. You didn't lose that fight, you got the victory. You taught me to love myself inwardly. My heart stopped, that was a C-section delivery. My memories of you, yeah, I got galleries. Your last days, cherish every moment. Every spirit gotta leave and pass over. No more crooked doctors and cold shoulders. Overcome this world, physician with lies. Toss that dirt on you, give me the reason to try. Yahweh give you wings now, teach me to fly. I can't forget that last tear coming down your eyes. This body just a shell, it's what's dwelling inside. One day at a time, I'ma take it with strides. If you woke up this morning and that's a victory, being of this world ain't did shit for me. Cause that's his story, not my history. Seeking the Father to get a sense of me. Got my mind on the kingdom, I see it vividly. Better guard your mind, protect your energy. Gotta cleave to your word, that's my remedy. Gotta cleave to your word, that's my remedy. My remedy.
Understand that your biggest battle is you. It's you.
Gotta trust the purpose, he got plans for you. Pray to the Lord, and he'll guide you through. Forgive us for our sins, have mercy on our souls. Fearing your judgment that keep me on my toes. Let God be true, and every man that liar. Cast your burdens on him and watch your weight get lighter. You gotta weather through them storms, but them clouds don't stay. So give me some clarity and show me your way. And put a hedge around my home and protect my gate. Yesterday I seen a man forgive a man for killing his son. It showed me hope, but the war ain't won. As long as you try, he extend his love. Every soldier got a story to tell. Constantly watching, only signs will tell. I found hope living cross from hell. And it's a war outside, no one is safe. Cause we the lost sheep, led astray. Just pace yourself when you fall in this race. Adversity is just a test of your faith. Embracing your love, I can't wait no more. Seek him now before he close that door. Conquer self when I in a war. Conquer self when I in a war. Gotta conquer self when I in a war. It's time to conquer. It's time to overcome. Fight temptation. Fight this world. Gotta trust the purpose, he got plans for you. I pray to the Lord, and he'll guide you through. Forgive us for our sins, have mercy on our souls. fearing your judgment that keep me on my toes. Let God be true and every man a liar. Got your burdens on them and watch your weight get lighter. You gotta weather through them storms, but them clouds don't stay. But give me some clarity and show me your way. And put a hedge around my home and protect my gate. Yesterday I seen a man forgive a man for killing his son. It showed me hope, but the war ain't won. As long as you try, extend his love.
Understand that your biggest battle.
AJK.
Look, sending up my prayers, get my mind right. Traveling the world and taking long flights. I had moments in this life that gave me long nights. Obstacles part of the process and the time's right. I do not enjoy the vanity of limelight. If we crash out in this world, we pay a fine price. We can't let these devils win, we got kids here. You gotta try to channel anger and then switch gears. Ain't no real praise, they don't give no recognition. But big homies quick to send niggas on reckless missions. Never had no leadership, not even in religion. So all roles that niggas chose, they likely led to prison. The fallibility of man to make them ask forgiveness. Had home invasions, wasn't Santa bringing gifts for Christmas. Lord, heal me from this prior PTSD. Cause I spent years feeling like I want the best me. Father, here against the supplication. Against the supplication. They took our voice, they tried to suffocate us. Took our voice, they tried to suffocate us. Every corner in my hood, I done rode and spent them. Cause I refuse to sit aside and try to play the victim. Father, help me make a plan that'll never fail. Cause we experienced some scenes we could never tell. Make us stoic and obedient to all our creeds. And give us strength cause those in you are really truly freed. We sat and did the sketch, them niggas sat in disbelief. They'd rather give you band-aids that never fix the bleed. Give wisdom to our sons and help guide our daughters. Without the strong men, the whole damn house is slaughtered. Bless us, Lord, never let us carry blinding anger that put the people that we love in the hands of danger. You start living when you navigate through grave mistakes. And we desire all our days in this dwelling place. The purpose of our growth, so we have a lot to carry. That every man hear the words in this sanctuary. Father, here against the supplication. Against the supplication. They took our voice, they tried to suffocate us. Took our voice, they tried to suffocate us. Father, hear us down here. We living in hell. We put our prayers before your throne. That the blind see. That those taught crookedness will walk straight. We are your servants. Those that have not forsaken your ways. Those who have not bowed their knee to Baal. Hear our prayers, Lord. Protect our household. From Yasha Allah.
AJK.
Yeah. Yeah. When you see some light, that's the breakthrough. Concrete jungle, it's a damn zoo. Eyes wide, while they live on snooze. I'm hoping what you touch impacts some souls. Picture perfect, nigga, like a centerfold. I'm all about my bread, that's the dinner roll. Do it on my lonely, you Lucas in the words. I remember drinking until my speech was slurred. But karma is the bitch, you better treat it right. It's power in these thoughts. She gave me mic. But this your life. Nigga roll the dice. Eviction notice. Try not to notice. But through your ups and downs, trying to find your purpose. Girded in this truth, blocking evil forces. Good intentions, create your invention. No huddle, fourth and inches. Keep on trying, heart of a lion. Keep on climbing on your way to Zion. Highs and lows, no time to fold. Since the snotty nose, I've been kind of bold. Keep on trying, heart of a lion. Keep on climbing on my way to Zion. Highs and lows, no time to fold. But since the snotty nose, I've been kind of bold. You headed to them streets, trying to fill the void. Trying to box with God, trying to win our Floyd. All these traps, gotta count the joy. I lift my voice up like a trumpet though. Wash away these sins and these transgressions. Change your outlook, that's your only weapon. But we the black Jews, these is mental Jews. Trying to set a pace while they drive on cruise. Can't trust their actions, they intent is cruel. I'm from a sunny place where it's shady people. Erase your history and they say we equal. Do your all in this world, they make you feeble. Built these corporations, look how they treat you. Get up on your grind, I'm thinking ownership. I know your past mistakes equate to something better. He give visions to the blind, Helen Keller. Keep on trying, heart of a lion. Keep on climbing on your way to Zion. Highs and lows, no time to fold. Since the snotty nose, I've been kind of bold. Keep on trying, heart of a lion. Keep on climbing on my way to Zion. Highs and lows, no time to fold. But since the snotty nose, I've been kind of bold.
All right. Shalom, shalom to everyone. Shalom, shalom. Comments. Put a 1 in the chat if you can hear me. Put a 1 in the chat if you can hear me. Babu Kasha. This is set. So that's it. Good sir, Ganun's in the building. Shalom, sir. Tazawar, yes, sir. Kwapa Akkad. Oh, you know what? It's a lot. Y'all praises, man. Akkad's in the chat. Appreciate you, brothers. Appreciate you. Sister Panyan is also in the chat. Shalom, sis. Got Shar as well. Sis Zaya. All right, all right. All right. All praises. Perfect, perfect. Yeah, you know, it's one of my favorite tracks. Yo, Gabar Malak need to repent, man. His music's not on Apple Music. But how am I supposed to support the brother if I can't download his music, man? It's all good though. You know, brother's been dropping some more fire tracks. Been giving them a listen every chance I get. So Sir Lamad's in the building. Shalom, Lamad. I'm saying, Panyan, I'm saying, man, you can't support it. You know, the music's, you can't, you know, download it and have unlimited access to it. And I said, we got, yo, man. You know, brothers support either way. Good night. Come on, man. The brothers need trailers, man. What y'all got going on back there? Looking forward to it, though. Looking forward to it nonetheless. So, all of you see the title to the lesson, the Seleucid Dynasty. Fix that out. It's up there. This past Saturday, in the opening of the Feast of Dedication, which is 8 days, the Captain Yahawashi gave an excellent and thorough, in-depth breakdown of pretty much everything covering the entire story of the Maccabees. And, you know, with what he brought out, the theme and the centrality that covers everything that pretty much encompassed our persecution with what happened throughout the story that we read from 1st to 2nd Maccabees. So what he had brought out, you know, pertaining to the history, the breakdown, Hellenism, Hellenistes, the terms, the terminology, just the historical backdrop, everything that he had brought forth is what I'm going to extensively continue into tonight, but not so much going into the story of Maccabees, but again, giving more light on the historical background and what happened and what took place before we get into Maccabees and what occurred in the background that ultimately led up to what we read in Maccabees. You know, because the preface in, I'll say the trailer, historically speaking, is much more important so that we understand what happened and what took place as we're reading in Maccabees and what set the stage for it. Without further ado, let me share my screen. All right. All right. Give this a second. Okay, it's not allowing me to present. Okay, there we go. There we go. All right. The Seleucid Empire. Again, but tonight's lesson is going to encompass, you know, the ascendancy of everything, how it all began, where it started from, the roots, and how we get to the book of Maccabees. Today's December 17th. All right, so from the very beginning. All right, so beginning from Seleucus Nicator I, he is the son of a Macedonian noble. He was a close associate of Alexander the Great in his campaigns in the east. He became the ruler of Syria and Babylonia after Alexander's death and the wars of the Diadochi, which were the successors. He was Perdiccas' chief supporter in the early struggle, but later was a party to his demise. In 316, that is BCE, he lost his domains and was forced to flee Egypt. With the help of Ptolemy, he regained Babylon, Media, and Susiana. This marked the beginning of the Seleucid Dynasty, which lasted until 63 BC. Daniel chapter 11 and verse 5 referred to him as the prince of the king of the south, who became stronger than the king. He was a separatist with Lysimachus, that's one of the other generals in which the lands were parted. Ptolemy and Cassander against Antigonus at Ipsus in 301 BC. That was the general that was fighting the rest of Alexander's generals for control over his empire after he died. As a result of the victory, he gained control of Syria and Cilicia. In 281, he won Asia Minor from Lysimachus. He founded a number of famous cities, among them Antioch on the Orontes. That is very important because that is one of the cities mentioned inside the New Testament. That is also one of the most populous cities when the Roman Empire took over. It was named after his father, who was Antiochus. Antiochus is the father of Seleucus. And then he passed down his father's name to his sons. And then, you know, they continued the tradition with their descendants afterwards. In 281, he won Salakia. Among them, Antioch and the Orontes, Laodicea, Seleucia, Edessa, and Berea. He settled many Jews in them and conferred upon them the rights of citizenship. This is the 3rd century BCE. He founded his new capital at Antioch and married the daughter of Demetrius, but he did not repudiate his Bactrian wife, Apama. Although he was a king of the East, he was basically Western in outlook. He aspired to gain the throne of Macedonia and reestablished a unified empire, but he was murdered in the attempt by Ptolemy II. All right, so more information on him. Oh. Salakia, did that cut off at the bottom? I think it did. I'll have to read it. Nevertheless, continuing, Seleucus Nicator I, born in 358 BC, dying in 281 BCE, was a Macedonian Greek general, the successor to Alexander the Great, who founded the vast Seleucid Empire in Asia, ruling from Asia Minor to India. Known as Nicator, which means the victorious, he emerged from the wars of the Diadochi after Alexander's death, establishing his dynasty by conquering territories, defeating rivals like Antigonus, and founding major cities like Antioch, creating a powerful Hellenistic kingdom that lasted for centuries. The Seleucid Empire was established in 312 BCE. I have that in bold italics for a reason. When he retook Babylon and used the city as his foundation, as establishing himself as the ruler in the eastern realm of the world, again founded by Seleucus Nicator I, one of Alexander the Great's generals, marking the start of the Seleucid era after he reclaimed control of the region during the wars of the Diadochi. This event solidified Seleucus's power over eastern territories, which he expanded to become a vast Hellenistic kingdom stretching from Anatolia to India, with Babylon serving as a foundational city and later a significant cultural center. In the map I'm about to show on the next slide, it also was pretty much the center for his empire, which is why he also used it. All right, and the bottom, it's a little bit cut off. The empire continued throughout the reigning of his descendants until 63 BCE, when the Romans under General Pompey arrived in Antioch, that was the capital, and established Syria, which is where it was, as a Roman province, bringing the rest of the remaining portions of the Seleucid Empire left under Roman hegemony. All right, and this is the map. So as all of you see here, you see Ptolemies, you see Antigonus, Cassander, and Lysimachus. Antigonus was defeated in the 4 generals that reigned after Antigonus was put down by Lysimachus, Cassander, Ptolemy, and Seleucus. These 4 left to reign over Alexander's empire after Antigonus was defeated, in which Lysimachus and Seleucus both split up pretty much most of the remnants of Anatolia, which is modern-day Turkey. This portion here where the orange is at, and also with Seleucus taking a little bit of it to the east. And you can see on the map, we are pretty much from what it looks like under, well, Antigonus at the time, but soon to be under Seleucus's control. And between the back and forth between the Ptolemies and the Seleucids, we are in the middle of that. So Seleucus has this entire big portion region here. These are the Hellenistic kingdoms after Alexander. This is circa 301 BCE. This is why Antigonus' name is still on the map. This is when and during the wars of the Diadochi were going on. And this is the territory and land that's being fought over. So in continuing, this is very important so that we geographically understand everything that's taking place. This is how massive the portion was that Seleucus inherited. And this is, and comparing it now, 22 years later in 301 BC, how split up it was and began to be after his generals were fighting over it. This is a coin, drachma, of Seleucus I, and this is a statue bust of him. Oh, got the sharp nose. It's crazy. And this is the family line. This is the family line. So from the top, you have King Seleucus, 305 to 281 BCE. I'm not going to pay too much attention to the other side. I'm going to get into the main portion of it. His first son, Antiochus I, inherited his throne after he died, passing on to King Antiochus II, and then giving onwards to Seleucus II. And the important two of these two would be King Antiochus III. King Antiochus III was also known as the Great, as Alexander was, and he also had a brother who was Seleucus III. But the line of the Seleucids continued through Antiochus III, giving way of King Seleucus IV, Philopator, and then you have the most important of all of them, who would be King Antiochus IV, the main antagonist inside the Book of Maccabees. So this is the Seleucid Dynasty. There are more, but it continues on up until the Romans come in and conquer. After the Roman general Pompey in 63 BC put an end to the Seleucid Empire. Yo, good none, that's a fact. That is a fact. You know, it's funny, they always bust off the noses of the Egyptian pharaohs, and it happened to a lot of them in these statue busts. It's crazy. All right. These two are also important. Ptolemy I and Ptolemy II. Oh, you know these are Edomites. Look at the hook. Jesus. Y'all see the sharpness of this. Damn. Man's got the hook, like the fish hook. And this is his son, Ptolemy II. He is also important. They're both important. This was Alexander's childhood friend who robbed his coffin and had him buried in Alexandria in Egypt. And this is the one that had the 5 books and the rest of the Old Testament translated into Greek. This is Ptolemy II Philadelphus, where Philadelphia comes from, brotherly love. Yo, good none, facts. They got the hook, man. Y'all know the question mark on your keyboard, like you got to just flip it. Like I think you hold on to it, you can flip it upside down. That's exactly what this nose is, man. He ain't got no upper lip. You know Esau make the face, and then you just see the bottom lip, and then his chin look like an extra. Oh man, I'm not gonna say it. Look like some extra hanging. Yeah, man, they got the nerve to be talking about how we look in our genetics and our DNA. You ain't got no upper lip. You got an extra ass cheek on your chin. Like, man. Anyways, and continuing. Yeah, says Maya, they are ugly. Sheesh, man. When you say Alexander, are you talking about Alexander the Great? Khan. These are the men and the generals, Rod, NY City, that came up after him. We're going into that now. That was Seleucus I. That was one of his generals we just covered, and his empire. And Ptolemy I was his childhood friend. This is the one here on the left that took his body to Alexandria, which is inside Egypt, a city he named after himself in Egypt, and he buried him there. And then this is his son, Ptolemy II, that came up and ruled after. Do not get Alexander and Alexandria confused. He named many places after himself before he died. The most famous one in Egypt. Yeah, Kangan and Salakia. I already talking about our features. Ain't no upper lip. Ass cheek on his chin. Beak nose, like, oh man. Anyways, let's continue. All right. So this is a lot, but this is very important. Antiochus III, i.e. known as the Great. Going back up I skipped because I didn't want to go through the entire line. I wanted to get to just what was important in the meat of the matter pertaining to the relevance of our relationship with particularly the Seleucids and how they transformed and changed up until we get to Antiochus IV. So Antiochus III, who's known as the Great, following his campaigns, he thus concentrated his warfare in the east between 212 and 206 BC, acquiring Armenia and regaining Parthia and Bactria as vassal kingdoms, which gained him, like Alexander, the title of the Great. So that's why the third is known as the Great. With the death of Ptolemy IV in 203 BC, who was succeeded by his son, 5 to 7 years of age, Antiochus saw his opportunity to take Syria from Egypt, and in 202 made a pact with Philip V of Macedon for a division of Egypt between the two powers. In 201, he invaded Palestine, and after great difficulty, captured Gaza. So again, if all of you remember the map, this is how we're in the middle. You know, because right between the Seleucids up north and the Egyptians to the south, we're right in the middle. So this would be us. So having secured Palestine, Antiochus invaded the dominions of Attalus, king of Pergamos, which was a pro-Roman, against Philip V, who was the king of Macedon. And in the winter of 199 to 198 BC, Scopas, who was an Egyptian general, hearing of Antiochus' absence, invaded Palestine and recovered the lost territory. So again, we're in the midst of everything that's going on. Antiochus returned to oppose Scopas, and at Panias, which is in the New Testament, Caesarea Philippi, Ptolemy IV was decisively defeated. There's the sources there. Josephus is one of them, and then the book of Daniel also referencing. He granted the Jews the freedom to worship according to their laws. So this is what the third did before we get to Maccabees. He granted the Jews the freedom to worship according to their laws, allowed them to complete and maintain the temple, exempted the council of elders, priests, and the scribes of the temple from taxes, which exemption the citizens of Jerusalem enjoyed for the first 3 years, and after that, the period they were exempted a third part of their taxes and released the prisoners. The Battle of Panias marked a turning point in Jewish history, for from this time until the Roman control in 63 BC, they remained connected with the Seleucid Dynasty. Under the Ptolemaic rule, the Jews were treated with considerable tolerance, but only after a brief period of tranquility under the Seleucid rule, the Jews experienced fierce persecution. You guys are going crazy. We used some wild comparisons. About it said, our mistake, we thought we were safe. It's not that we were safe. Throughout all captivity, we've had shares of turmoil, or we've had shares of hella persecution, and it's been the same in all of them, which is no different than the captivity we're currently living in now. We've had our share of, there are times where we're at prosperity, we're at peace, and then we're in seasons of adversity. You know, we've had it with the Babylonian captivity. Look at Daniel. He was third in the kingdom of heaven. It didn't ever stop him from getting persecuted and being put inside the lion's den. It didn't stop Nebuchadnezzar from nearly killing the three men and shoving them inside the furnace, which killed the guards that sent them down there because that's how hot the fire was. Look at the Persian captivity. We were allowed to return home and rebuild the temple. That doesn't mean it didn't come without persecution, and Darius has to go inside the ancient temple records and see Cyrus allowed the Jews to return home and build the temple. This is no different. This is no different. Congalan, just like now, nothing's new under the sun. We have periods of peace. We can relax, but we're still in captivity. All right, so this is a stone bust of Antiochus the Great. Again, they all have that same nose. Sheesh. So at the turn of the century, the second century being, Rome began to play an important part with the Seleucid house. Rome defeated Hannibal at Zama, which is near Carthage, that's northeast Africa, in 202 BC, the Macedonian monarchy in 197 BC, and now Rome concentrated on the Seleucids. So now Rome was in the midst of now conquering and moving more eastward to now get the Greek, or how can I say, the Greek portions of Alexander's remaining empire under now Roman hegemony and control. Antiochus went westward and invaded Thrace in 196 BC, and with Hannibal's influence, he invaded Greece, which the Romans had evacuated in 194 BC, but the Romans retaliated, defeating him at Thermopylae in 191 BC and Magnesia in Asia Minor in 190 BC. In the peace treaty signed at Apamea in 189 BC, Antiochus agreed to give Asia Minor north and west of the Tarsus Mountains much of his military force and pay a heavy indemnity over a 12-year period. He had to deliver 20 hostages to Rome until the indemnity was paid, and one of the hostages was his son, Antiochus IV Epiphanes. These are all the sources here on the bottom. In 187 BC, Antiochus III died in a rebellion. He was succeeded by his son, Seleucus IV Philopator. All right, Seleucus IV Philopator. Here it goes again, man. That nose, man. I'm telling you guys, Seleucus. No lip, butt chin, Peter Griffin looking like Seleucus. All right. So Seleucus IV Philopator. His name, last portion of the name means father loving. From 218 to 175 BC, he was the son of Antiochus the Great. That one is the third, not to be confused with the one who was his brother, who was Antiochus IV Epiphanes. He maintained a diminished empire by keeping scrupulously to the terms of the Peace of Apamea with Rome. This forbade further adventures in the West under penalty of heavy fine. He remained on friendly terms with the two other independent powers of the East, which were Egypt and Macedonia. Conganon, I got you. No sweat on that up. The bottom is cut out again. Don't know why. So it says he was assassinated by a plot of Heliodorus, his chief minister, and was succeeded by his brother. We're going to get to him shortly because he was mentioned in 2 Maccabees that the angels came and visited and intercessed on our behalf of, freeing us from persecution. And I don't believe that this is the same Heliodorus for this reason. In this next slide. All right. Now we get to the devil incarnate himself, Antiochus IV Epiphanes. All right. So born in 215 BCE to dying in 163, some say 164 BCE. He was the third son of Antiochus III, who succeeded his brother Seleucus IV Philopator as king in 175 BC. After being in Rome for 14 years as a hostage in 176, 175, because his father had to agree part of terms of the treaty, his nephew Demetrius I, second son of Seleucus IV, took his place, and Antiochus went to Athens, where after a short time he was appointed chief magistrate. In 175 BC, his brother Seleucus IV was murdered by his chief minister Heliodorus, and upon hearing the news, with the help of Eumenes II, the king of Pergamon, he ousted Heliodorus and made himself king. His newly acquired kingdom lacked political and financial stability. To heal the political factions within his realm, he attempted to unify them by a vigorous program of Hellenization. Religion was one of the unifying factors, and although he was no monotheist, he was favorable to the Olympian Zeus. In circa 169 BC, he even encouraged people to worship his own person in the form of Zeus. He hence assumed the title Theos Epiphanes, meaning the manifest God, but some of his enemies called him Epimanes, which requires the only letter change in the Greek spelling, a couple of letters, meaning he was Antiochus the madman, or he was Antiochus that was insane. Only 52 years he lived. Soon after Antiochus' accession, he was called upon to settle a dispute between the high priest Onias III, who was a pro-Ptolemaic, and Onias' brother Jason. Jason would be the Greek vernacular of what would be Joshua in the Hebrew. His brother was very much a Hellen himself that followed after Greek customs and fashions, as we're about to read, who was a pro-Seleucid. So in 2 Maccabees chapter 3, we read about Onias, who was an Aaronite, descendant of Aaron of the priestly line. He was over the people at this time because it was ran out. The nation at this time was ran oligarchically by the Aaronites that religiously and spiritually led the people, but more so politically led the people at this point. And there's a split now happening between these two because one's Ptolemaic and the other one is a pro-Seleucid. When it says pro-Ptolemaic, it's speaking on behalf of the fact that the Ptolemies were more tolerant and were more open to the Jews following after their own customs and their own laws and not being so much persecuted or persuaded to follow after Greek customs and fashion. Even though there was a mighty and heavy populace of Jews in Egypt. In 174 BC, Jason secured the high priesthood by a larger payment of money to Antiochus and by pledging his wholehearted support to the Hellenizing of the Jerusalemites. That's what we read in 2 Maccabees chapter 4 and verse 9. If all of you remember, he wanted to make those at Jerusalem and have them be called by the name of the Antiochians. And the scriptures and the sources are there. Jason asked if he would be permitted to build the gymnasium in Jerusalem for the Jewish youth in order to introduce them to the Greek games and customs. Of course, Antiochus immediately agreed to all this, for it would not only further his Hellenization program, but also help him to line the Seleucid coffers, which were depleted at least in part by his father's payment of the heavy indemnity to Rome. 3 years later, Jason sent Menelaus to Antiochus with money he owed to the king. Menelaus seized the opportunity by pledging to Antiochus a more vigorous Hellenization program and offering 300 more talents than Jason was able to give. Antiochus accepted this, for it meant not only more money, which he needed, but also since Menelaus was outside the priestly Aaronic line, which was bad itself, because according to 2 Maccabees 4 and 23 and 3 and verse 4, he was a Benjamite, not a Levite of the Aaronite line. It would break a great unifying factor among the Jews, and it would allow the Seleucids to select high priest at will. Jason fled to the Ammonite country. In a desperate need of money, Menelaus robbed the temple treasury of a number of golden vessels, selling some and giving others to Andronicus, Antiochus' deputy in Antioch, as a bribe. The legitimate high priest Onias III, who was still in Antioch, protested against these actions, and Menelaus urged Andronicus to kill Onias. And ultimately and sadly, he was put to death. His son, according to Josephus, he recorded, escaped to Egypt, who was Onias IV. And yeah, he escaped to Egypt after his father was killed. So I bring this out because this is what he was doing that we read about. But from a secular perspective, it gives the overall view of everything that was going on and what was happening. So the importance is that these two are not only pro-Seleucid and wanting to agree to Hellenize the people, but they want favor with the king and will do anything to sell out their own people. And yes, it does come with the price. So how can I put this? All of you remember the Black Panthers, any kind of movement we've had, Fred Hampton, and there's a long number of names of all of our political leaders, those that have fought for us, you know, unapologetically and did their best. We're all sold out amongst our own people. Nothing ever happened without Esau going to our own people first and making them traitors against their own. It makes sense why Esau does that, because Esau cannot fight us alone. You know, if the Lord be with us, and usually most of the time we get the victory. And the thing with that is that it shows you how much weaker Esau is compared to you in the strength that we dominantly have as a people, because the only way they win and conquer is by making traitors of our own, or by having one of our own fight against us. I believe the Captain Yahawashi brought out a while back, if all of you remember, when the March of Jerusalem happened, one of the generals that Titus was with was a Jew. If all of you read about the conquest of Mexico by Hernan Cortez, he used some of the tribes, especially how heavy they were in number, that Montezuma was not confederate with and who were his enemies and didn't like him as he was ruling, no different than Solomon was in the scriptures with the heavy iron hand. and used them to fight back against Montezuma and his own forces. So it's important to understand that what they're doing here that we read about is nothing new. It's always been Esau's tactic because his words were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart, as Psalm says. This is nothing new that Esau does, right? Yeah, they definitely did severely desecrate the temple. And yes, they always had informants. I believe there was a program called, correct me if I'm wrong, it was called the Ghetto Informant Program. And they spied on us in our own communities. You know? And there was always a way of getting inside without them covertly blowing up their cover. Excellent point, Ganon. The cunning hunter. He's very cunning. Very. Right? And this is the way that they got us, because when we can betray and go against one another, you know, this is all they're capable of doing in order to really bring us down. All right, so this is the last slide. You guys see his nose busted off, of course. You know Esau all got the same traits, and no upper lip. You know, you only see the bottom lip, and there's no upper lip. You know, they have the nerve to call us animals, but when you shave a lot of monkeys, they're pale. You know, it's funny. You guys know the comedian Godfrey. He said, you know, when it comes to comparing us with animals, you know, Darwinism and evolution and stuff like that, you say we evolved from monkeys. First off, monkeys are pale skinned and very white. They have straight hair. They have no lips. And he said they have no ass. So how are you comparing us to monkeys, but black people don't have the description physically at all that links us to evolving from animals, particularly monkeys in this case? If anyone's more closely related to animals, it's definitely Esau. You know, monkeys, they got the lip. You don't see, there's no upper lip that they have. It's just the bottom. We can't, listen, we can't do the tight lip like, you still gonna see it. Esau, it's like they go all the way in. You don't see nothing. You see this here, you tuck this in, you just think it's just the mouth. Yo, good night. He did go in up. Oh yeah, absolutely. You shave them. We'll see who indefinitely is closely related to these animals. All right, so let's get into the slide. So in the winter of 168 to 169 BC, the two brothers who were Ptolemy the 6th and the 7th, they were co-reigning at this time in Memphis and in Alexandria. And Egypt agreed to unite as joint kings against their uncle Antiochus. Inevitably, Antiochus went to Egypt in the spring of 168 BC. The Ptolemaic kingdom was in no shape to offer much resistance. Antiochus marched to Memphis, and from there he went again to Alexandria. However, before he could subdue Alexandria, the Roman representative, his full name is Gaius Popilius Linnaeus, whom he had known at Rome because he was a hostage there, if you guys remember, handed him at Eleusis, which was a suburb of Alexandria, an ultimatum from the Senate, the Roman Senate that was, because they heard the news and both of the Ptolemies wanted help from the Romans at this time, to evacuate Egypt within a certain number of days. Rome was not able to come at this time to Egypt because of its involvement in the Third Macedonian War from 171 to 168 BCE. Antiochus wanted time for consideration, but the Roman Senate, Roman legate, arrogantly drew his walking stick, a circle in the sand around Antiochus, and demanded his answer before he stepped outside the circle. Having become acquainted with Roman power when he was a hostage in Rome for 14 years, he agreed to evacuate. Now, I'm going to explain that, and I'm going to show the link to Maccabees. When it says at the last portion, the Roman representative Popilius Linnaeus, so both of the Ptolemy brothers, the kings, they inquired of Rome to help them fight and ward off Antiochus because he wanted Egypt under his control. So he drew a circle around Antiochus, or it's known historically as a line in the sand. What he did was he gave him an ultimatum It's historically known. And told him, I want your answer before you step outside the circle. If you don't give me an answer before you step outside the circle, and you step outside the circle without giving me an answer, I'm going back to Rome and telling them that you're declaring war, and Rome will come and fight against you, which would have been the answer if he stepped outside. But because he was acquainted, already have been a hostage at Rome, he gave the answer that he wouldn't militarily come against Egypt and take it for his own and would leave altogether. So to put, he was bitched not only in front of both the Ptolemy kings, he was bitched in front of his entire army, who had to go back up into, had to march back up through the northern part of Egypt, go through Israel again, and then history falls out from there. Now, the particular year that this happens was in 169 BC. So now what I'm going to do with, I'm going to leave this on the screen. I'm going to go to 1 Maccabees, chapter 1 and verse 10. And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, the son of Antiochus the king, Antiochus the third, that is the great, who had been an hostage at Rome, again, as we just went through, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. So now, Khan, he was deboed. He was deboed, and there was nothing he could do about it. Just like how that brother got his chain snatched and couldn't do nothing about it, he got his manhood snatched, and he had to turn around and leave Egypt. So, in 1 Maccabees 1 and 10, if you guys want to write this down, put notes. When this says in the reign of the 137th year of the Greeks, the timeline of Maccabees is being subtracted from when the Seleucid Empire was founded. So if it makes sense, because the Seleucid Empire was founded in 312 BC, mark that date down because it's very important to understand the timeline of events that you're reading about in Maccabees. That is when the Seleucid Empire was founded, even though he was already prior to that the predominant ruler over much of the Near East. He did not officially establish his control and his sovereignty until he established his empire in 312 BC. So when you're reading, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks, you subtract 312 from 137, you get 175 BCE. In 1 Maccabees chapter 1 and verse 10. So Antiochus the fourth Epiphanes came to power when? In 175 BC. Now, skipping down to 1 Maccabees chapter 1 and verse 20, this is also important. This is what we just read on this slide. This is why I'm going to keep it up. It says, and after that Antiochus had smitten Egypt, he returned again in the 143rd year and went up against Israel and Jerusalem with a great multitude, and entered proudly into the sanctuary and took away the golden altar and the candlestick of light and all the vessels thereof, and the table of showbread and the pouring vessels and the vials and the censers of gold and the veil and the crowns and the golden ornaments that were before the temple, and also which he pulled off. Okay, so in 169, when this happens, he had to leave. This is why 169 and 168 BC is on the screen. He went down to Egypt to try to conquer and militarily take Egypt over for himself to gain it to much more of his geographical territory. And so that way he could tax them and also take spoils from them to pay his indemnity back to the Romans. So that's what we just read in 1 Maccabees chapter 1 and verse 20. And prior to that, 1 Maccabees 1 and 10. Put a con in the chat for me if you're following along with the timeline so far. So in verse 10, you have 175 BCE. And then in verse 20, you have 169 BCE. Put a con in the chat for me if you guys understand that. Because when it says in the kingdom of the Greeks or the year of the Greeks, the timeline is being subtracted from 312 BCE, which is when Seleucid officially gained his independence and sovereignty and established his empire in that year officially. All right, all praises. So now here's what's important, and now we really begin to understand the full-blown persecution of what happens, unfolds, and takes place in the book of Maccabees. In 1 Maccabees chapter 1 and verse 29, if you guys could star that, underline the number, this is also an important verse. It says, and after 2 years fully expired, the king sent his chief collector of tribute unto the cities of Judah, who came unto Jerusalem with a great multitude, and spake peaceable words unto them, but all was deceit. For when they had given him credits, he fell suddenly upon the city and smote it very sore and destroyed much people of Israel. I'm going to skip down. Verse 38, insomuch that the inhabitants of Jerusalem fled because of them, whereupon the city was made an habitation of strangers, and became strange to those that were born in her, and her own children left her. Her sanctuary was laid waste like a wilderness. Her feasts were turned into reproach, her honor into contempt. So, at that point, and the defiling of the temple, the persecution and the slaughter of the Jews, and everything that we just read, from verse 30 all the way on down to all the way to chapter 2, this is when everything unfolds and takes place. It particularly happened after 168 BC, because in verse 29, again, it says, after 2 years were fully expired. So from verse 10, 312 minus 137 in the kingdom of the Greeks, that's 175 BCE. Following on down to verse 20, then you have, and after that Antiochus had smitten, he returned again in the 143rd year. That's 169 BCE. 2 years expiring in verse 29 is now bringing you to 167 BCE. So again, after 168 BC that you guys see here on the screen, when he left Egypt, this is when the persecution began. And you could understand, after Antiochus got deboed by this Roman representative, this Roman legislator, and told him, you have a choice of whether you're going to leave here in all your forces or you're going to declare war on Rome by fighting against these two kings. Pick your choice. He had to leave. He knew the power of the Roman Empire. He has to leave with his thousands of troops all the way back home to Antioch in Syria, which is north of us, to his headquarters. So you can understand feeling defeated, feeling embarrassed, feeling completely humbled by what just happened. He's going to take out his anger on Jerusalem. Why? Because he needs money. He has to pay the Romans back, and he's implementing his vigorous Hellenization program that was outlined in slides earlier. So when you're reading in verse 41, which continues along the timeline, it says, moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people. We read earlier what he was purposely doing was unifying everybody so that he could hurry up and pay off his indemnity by politically, culturally, and socially uniting everyone that he had sovereignty over in one cultural dominion. That would have been easier for him to rule over because there's no different multiple amount of factions that he has to worry about. So in continuing, if you skip down to 1 Maccabees chapter 1 and verse 54, it says, now in the 15th day of the month Caslu, in the 149th year, they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar and built idol altars throughout the cities of Judah on every side. Again, 312 minus 145 minus 145, that's 167 BCE. And then I'm just going to skip for timeline purposes. When we defeated the Greek forces, when we overcame them, when we fought back, we read about the battles where Mattathias led the revolt originally as the father. He left his message behind, be of good courage, let Judah lead your battles, let Simon be your counselor. May the Lord be with you. Remember the good acts of what happened and what was done for our forefathers, so on and so forth. At that point, then, when he dies in First Maccabees chapter 2 and verse 70, it says, and he died, that's Mattathias the father, and he died in the 146th year, and his sons buried him in the sepulchres of his fathers at Modin, and all Israel made great lamentation for him. That's 166 BCE. Now, skipping over to First Maccabees chapter 4 and verse 52, says, now in the 25th day of the 9th month, which is called the month of Caslu, in the 148th year, they rose up at times in the morning. This is when we rededicated the temple, cleansed it, purified it, when we had the opportunity and chance to do so after defeating the Greek forces. Now, the 148th year subtracted from 312 is 164 BCE. So in verse 52 in chapter 4, that's 164 BCE. So from 167 to 164 is 3 years. And in continuing the rest of reading Maccabees, you'll be able to continue to find the dates, everything, so on and so forth accordingly, because it's going to keep giving you the time frame and time period from the measurement of the Greeks, because we are currently under Greek hegemony and sovereignty at this point. We are no longer our own independent nation. Put a comment in the chat for me if that makes sense. If I need to repeat anything, let me know. I will gladly do so. I want everybody to understand this and for everyone to be on the same page. He did take his anchor out on this, and that's what has to be understood. It wasn't just the fact that he wanted to Hellenize us; it was the fact that he got humbled by the Roman senator and the legislator. So what he decided to do in that was then persecute us because of what happened to him. And along the way of doing so, killing two birds with one stone, decided to rob the temple of all its treasury, jewelry, and everything, so on and so forth, again, to continue paying his indemnities off to the Romans. It wasn't just us he did that to, by the way. He went around to the local peoples of his empire, was known for robbing temples and taking from his subjects and the conquered peoples. All right, all praises. So in his humiliation, that's why he did this. All right. Let me stop sharing. All right. But I definitely will be sharing this in the chats for all of you guys. So don't worry about that. But that concludes the lesson. I just wanted to bring that out pertaining to all the information we need to know about what particularly happened in the background. It's a lot to get into with the first, the second, and it's back and forth because Antiochus this and then Seleucus and then Antiochus that, and those three are important because Antiochus III, then Seleucus IV, the brother of Antiochus IV Epiphanes, when he dies, Antiochus then comes up into power. Antiochus III is much more graceful and tolerant of the Jews, not allowing them to pay taxes for 3 years. And then once Seleucus IV dies, you have Antiochus IV Epiphanes that comes into power and rulership. He is the main antagonist of the story. He is the most important one of all of them. So this is kind of a loop back on what the Captain Yahawashi taught last Saturday, but this is just more information pertaining to what had happened and what had took place before you get to Maccabees. So everything brought out tonight with the presentation is important for all of you because you have to realize and understand we need that information before we get and read into Maccabees. And I would present that first before going into Maccabees so that whoever it is you're speaking to knows the historical backdrop and what happened and what was taking place that led to the events and then led to what then becomes known as what we read the New Testament. When we're reading Grecian, Greeks, Gentiles, we know the context. We can break it down for what we're reading and also go into history to give case and example of what happened, what took place, and what occurred, so that the entirety of what we're reading is brought together in one big picture that's clear to be understood. Shalom Azaliyah. If anything, just watch back the classes. Tonight was just a presentation, a little bit into the timeline pertaining to the events that happened and unfolded in Maccabees. From the Captain Yahweh's lesson last week into this one, they're both just parallel presentations about the history of what happened, what occurred, and what took place. You brothers last year that were present for the Florida presentation of the Feast of Dedication given by the General Guar. It was an excellent 4 hours of information that was given and brought out, and pretty much surmises not just the past state, but the present state of our people today, still repeating and doing the same things that we were then. And understanding that, it helps you to understand literally it's not difficult to see we are the same people that come right back, repeat and do the same things. So I didn't want to make it too extensive because we already have mighty breakdowns on the Feast of Dedication. I remember, I believe the first one I did was roughly about 4 hours, but I went into all of it to kind of explain the whole history of what happened and what took place. You know, that's just how, of all the captivities, I'd say this is the most important one, because this is when the identity change amongst Israelites really becomes known in the scriptures and leads to the foundational understanding of the New Testament, when Yahawashi is on the scene, the Gentiles, the Greeks, so on and so forth. And this is ultimately what changed the turning tide of our history, because now it's not just Jews and it's not just the law that's really the main focal point anymore. It's now we're following after the customs of the Greeks. We're willingly and giving up the ways of our forefathers to follow after the heathen, and we're not realizing and understanding how much that still is us today. You don't have to make it seem as though you want to buy anything or purchase anything to make us sellouts. We're willingly going to just do it. You know, that same mentality they had back then is very much now. There were many Israelites that said, we've had much sorrow since we left the heathen. Let's go join them so that we may not be sorrowful again. It's the same mentality. We come right back. You know, this is why Ecclesiastes says nothing is new under the sun. And it's up to us to realize this so that we don't repeat the same mistakes. We can read it, but the more important point is do not be it. All right. Any questions, comments, concerns before we rise and face the east and close on out? Matter of fact. Absolutely will not be desecrated. Will be upheld with all righteousness. All right. All right. With that being said, Amadim upon Akwadam. This is Psalm chapter 131. Lord, my heart is not haughty, nor mine eyes lofty. Neither do I exercise myself in great matters or in things too high for me. Surely I behaved and quieted myself as a child that is weaned of his mother. My soul is even as a weaned child. Let Israel hope in the Lord from henceforth and forever. In the name of Yahweh, Bahasham Yahawashi, the Wadathim Yad, Aman. Shalom to the class. Allah Tawab to everyone.